I want you to picture something with me for a second. Just imagine a stark, pure white background.
Okay, totally blank canvas.
Right. Now, on the far left side of this white background, there's a tiny, almost fragile little icon of a dollar sign.
Got it.
And then on the far right side, looming over it, is this massive, heavy, dark shadow. And that shadow represents a global ecological footprint.
So a tiny wallet and a massive environmental impact.
Exactly. And sitting right between them, right in the center of the canvas, is this giant, pulsing red question mark.
That is quite the visual. It feels like a setup for a pretty major paradox.
It really is, because today we are asking a question that completely upends how we usually think about progress. Can money actually buy human development?
Oh, the traditional answer is always yes, right?
Right. But we're looking at a specific case today that breaks that rule. We're doing a deep dive into the Republic of Tajikistan. And the premise here is just staggering.
It really is. We're talking about a country where the gross national income per capita is, it's roughly a mere fraction, like around 2% of the world average.
Just 2%. But here's the absolute hook. When you take their global human development ranking and you suddenly adjust it to account for planetary pressures like literally deducting points for destroying the Earth, Tajikistan doesn't just hold its ground, it jumps up 21 places in the global rankings.
21 places. You'd have to understand, in the world of global indices, a 21-place leap is an earthquake.
It's unheard of.
Countries will spend a decade fighting for a single decimal point. So a jump like that means the underlying mechanics of their society are operating on a completely different blueprint.
Exactly. So to unpack this green development paradox, we've got an incredible set of data. We're looking at 3 decades of metrics, straight from 1990 all the way to 2023.
Yeah, we are utilizing the Human Development Index, the HDI, alongside its much more, let's say, ruthless modern variant, the Planetary Pressures Adjusted HDI, or the PHDI.
Right, the one that actually charges you for your carbon. So our mission today for this deep dive is to figure out how a post-Soviet nation, recovering from some really profound historical trauma, managed to build this resilience.
And we'll see how their historical educational roots and a low-carbon reality offer up this entirely alternative model for what progress can actually look like.
It's fascinating, but to get there, we have to start at the very baseline of human survival. Because to understand where Tajikistan is in 2023, you really have to grasp the sheer gravity of where they were in the early 90s.
Yeah, we need to anchor ourselves specifically around 1993.
Right. If you look at the HDI graph for Tajikistan, it's this steady upward slope. In 1993, their HDI was down at 0.549.
Which is incredibly low.
Yeah. But by 2023, it has climbed to 0.691. That is a roughly 25.9% increase.
And it's worth pointing out how that syncs up with the world average, too, because the global average grew from 0.617 to 0.756 over that same time. So Tajikistan is riding that exact same wave of progress.
They are. But it hasn't been without its bumps. There's a very specific marker on this timeline if you trace it a dip right in 2020.
Right. The COVID-19 blip.
Exactly. You can literally draw a circle right around 2020 on the graph. Their HDI fell from 0.673 down to 0.664.
Which, every country took a hit there. But what's interesting about Tajikistan's data isn't the dip itself, it's the rebound.
The V-shape.
Yes. It wasn't this long, drawn-out stagnation. They had a rapid, highly resilient V-shaped recovery, bouncing right back up to 0.691 by 2023.
And the engine behind that resilience, the absolute strongest engine pulling their whole human development score up, is life expectancy.
This is where the numbers just get wild.
They really do. I want you to visualize a progress bar. Back in 1993, the country was deeply scarred by civil conflict following the Soviet collapse. Their life expectancy hit a tragic low. We're talking 55.5 years.
That is functionally a collapsing demographic.
Right. But watch the progress bar fill up. By 2023, that number has surged to 71.8 years.
It's just phenomenal.
That is an addition of 16.3 years of life per person. But okay, wait, I have to push back here, or at least ask the question that I know you're probably thinking too.
Go for it.
If their economy is, only a fraction of the West's, and they aren't throwing billions of dollars at hyper-advanced hospitals and biotech, how on earth do you mathematically add 16 years to a whole population's life?
Yeah, it seems impossible if you equate health directly to GDP. But you have to look at what analysts call the peace dividend.
The peace dividend. Break that down.
Sure. So the transition from active civil conflict in the 90s to relative stability, that alone removes a massive amount of premature mortality. People stop dying in conflicts.
Right. The most immediate acute cause is just gone.
Exactly. But beyond that, it's about reestablishing the absolute foundations of public health. We're not talking about robotic surgery. We're talking about basic sanitation, clean
It's
water.
childhood immunization.
Yes. Localized maternal health clinics. When you implement those foundational interventions universally, the return on investment in terms of human years lived is just astronomical.
That makes so much sense. And the data shows it worked. The gap between Tajikistan and the world average life expectancy, which is 73.4 years, has shrunk to a mere 1.6 years.
To go from the mid-50s to being just a year and a half behind the global average is a monumental achievement in public health.
It is, but okay, if you're extending everyone's life by 16 years, that naturally begs the next question. From the length of life, we have to look at the quality and the potential of that life.
Which brings us to education.
Right. And this is where the deep dive gets incredibly paradoxical, because we see these really deep historical roots, but the new branches are kind of stagnant.
Yeah, the education data is definitely a double-edged sword. Let's look at the stagnation first.
Okay, so imagine a funnel graphic. You've got students pouring into the top of the school system, but as the funnel goes down, they slowly trickle out. The metric here is expected years of schooling, or EYS.
Right. How many years a kid starting school today can expect to finish?
Exactly. In 2023, the expected years of schooling in Tajikistan is 10.85 years, but the world average is 13.04 years.
That's a huge gap. Trailing the global average by over 2 full years in a modern knowledge economy is a serious structural issue.
But the truly concerning part isn't just the gap with the world, it's the flat line in their own historical data. If you mark it on a chart, that number, 10.85, has barely moved since 2006.
It's just completely stalled out.
And shockingly, if you look way back to 1990, the expected schooling was actually 11.8 years. So it's slightly lower today than it was 30 years ago.
Which indicates an economic bottleneck. Kids are likely being pulled out of that funnel early to work, maybe in agriculture, or to migrate for remittances, just to help the family survive.
And here's the massive hidden advantage we mentioned. That's only the kids currently in the funnel. What about the adults?
The mean years of schooling, the MYS.
Yes. Think of it like this.
Yep,
Imagine
yeah.
a town that has this massive, gorgeous, historic library. It is just packed with classics. That library represents the older generation, the stock adult population.
I like that analogy.
But the local bookstore has stopped ordering new releases for the kids, so the kids aren't reading as much, but the town itself is still historically incredibly well read.
Right. Because if we picture 2 circles representing adult education.
Yeah, the circle for Tajikistan's mean years of schooling for adults is 11.27 years. That circle is visibly, significantly larger than the world average circle, which is only 8.7 years.
It's an incredible legacy. They have a highly educated adult population, mostly stemming from universal education policies during the Soviet era. They have this massive baseline of literacy and capability.
But that slowing expansion for the future generations, that stagnant funnel, it really threatens their long-term ability to innovate, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You can't run a 21st century economy purely on the education your adults got in the 1980s and 90s.
Right. And speaking of the economy, if the adults are this highly educated and they're living almost as long as the global average, why does the country's HDI still rank 128th in the world?
Well, we have to follow the data straight to the wallet. The economic anchor is heavy.
Heavy is an understatement. The gross national income per capita is a massive chasm.
Yeah, let's look at the stacked bar chart for this.
Okay, so the GNI per capita for Tajikistan, adjusted for purchasing power in 2021 dollars, is $5,747.
And the world average.
$20,327.
Wow.
Yeah, the world average is roughly 3.5 times higher. Now, to be fair, Tajikistan has recovered steadily. Back in 1996, it was down around $1,227.
So they've multiplied their income nearly 5 times. That is serious growth.
It is. But compared to the rest of the world, that absolute dollar amount is still a massive weight pulling their ranking down.
But looking just at dollars doesn't really tell us how people actually live. We have to look deeper.
You mean the Multidimensional Poverty Index, the MPI?
Exactly. Because poverty isn't just a lack of cash. It's a lack of basic human needs. You can't eat a dollar bill.
Very true.
The MPI looks at overlapping deprivations, and when we look at Tajikistan's MPI value, which is 0.029, with a poverty incidence of 7.4% as of 2017, we can slice that into a pie chart to see what's actually driving the poverty.
And when you look at those slices, it is super revealing. The two largest slices of the poverty pie are nutrition, which accounts for 35.7%, and school attendance at 25.8%.
That's over 60% of their multidimensional poverty driven by just food security and getting kids into classrooms.
But wait, didn't we just say they have a highly educated adult population? Why is school attendance driving a quarter of their poverty?
Ah, right. It feels contradictory, but it connects perfectly back to that stagnant funnel we just talked about.
The 10.85 expected years.
Exactly. The adults are educated, yes. But the current vulnerable households are pulling their kids out of school right now due to economic shocks. The poverty is happening to the youth's education today.
That makes sense. And the nutrition slice, 35.7%, that proves that future poverty alleviation can't just be about creating macro-level jobs.
No, it has to be about localized health and food security interventions.
Exactly. But averages and national pie charts can hide a lot of realities.
They hide the inequalities.
Exactly. And to see how this economic reality is actually experienced, we have to split the data by gender.
The GDI balance, or rather the imbalance.
Yeah, picture a balancing scale, and it is tipping noticeably to one side. Tajikistan is in GDI Group 3. Their Gender Development Index is 0.926, which is below the world's 0.955.
And if you break down the raw HDI scores, the female score is 0.662, while the male score is higher at 0.715.
Right. Men also have a lead of about 0.7 years in expected schooling. But the real rift, the absolute canyon in the data, is the income.
It's jarring.
I want you to imagine two wallets. The male wallet has a GNI of $7,504. The female wallet is $4,051. The male wallet is almost double the size.
It's an extreme ratio, 1.85 times higher for men.
Why is it so severe? I mean, women are educated, they're living longer. Why the massive pay gap?
It essentially boils down to two structural issues. First, severe labor market segregation. Men dominate the formal, higher-paying sectors, and crucially, the massive remittance economy migrating for construction or industrial work is overwhelmingly male.
And the second issue?
Unpaid care work. Traditional gender roles in the region mean that almost all domestic responsibilities, childcare, elder care, cooking, fall entirely on women. It acts as an anchor, physically preventing them from participating equally in the paid economy.
It's just a huge loss of potential. But here's where the data throws us another curveball. Despite this massive income gap, if you look at the Gender Inequality Index, the GII, there are these stunning micro-victories.
The paradox deepens. Let's talk about the parliament.
Yes. Women hold 26.6% of parliamentary seats.
Which is incredible when you realize that in 1990, it was just 2.9%.
They practically went from zero to slightly beating the global average in a generation. And it gets better with education. An incredible 93.7% of women have at least some secondary education.
93.7%. And the global average is what, 62%?
Yeah, exactly, 62.0%. They are absolutely crushing the global average.
Wow.
It's like being given a VIP all-access pass to the political and educational arenas, right? You're in the building, you've got the credential, but then your credit card gets declined at the merge stand. The representation is totally there, the education is there, but the economic empowerment just isn't catching up.
That is a perfect analogy. The structural credentials haven't translated into cash in the wallet yet.
So, given that massive gender income gap, you'd naturally assume Tajikistan's overall HDI must be deeply damaged by inequality. Like, the whole society must be incredibly lopsided.
But it isn't. And this is where we introduce the inequality-adjusted HDI, or the IHDI.
The leaky bucket.
Yes. Imagine human development as a bucket of water.
Okay.
The IHDI measures how much water leaks out through the holes of unequal distribution.
So if we look at the world average, the global bucket loses a massive 22.0% of its water. Nearly a quarter of all global progress is lost to inequality.
But Tajikistan's bucket.
Tajikistan only loses 14.0%.
Their bucket is surprisingly watertight.
It really is. And you have to ask, why? How is the total societal loss so much lower than the global norm when men are making almost double what women make?
Because when it comes to the true basics of life expectancy and foundational health, the distribution is incredibly egalitarian.
No, wait, let's clarify a quick nuance here. The data shows their health inequality is roughly 15.7%, which is actually slightly higher than the world's 12.9% on that
Mm.
specific metric.
Right. Good catch.
But, and this is the key, their overall structural equality is bolted down by that universal adult education and baseline access. So even with that slight health variance and the income gap, the total societal loss is buffered. It stays way lower than the global norm.
Exactly. The absolute baseline of human dignity learning to read, living to 71, is shared so broadly across the population that it prevents the whole society from fracturing.
Which brings us to the absolute crescendo of this deep dive, the green miracle.
The PHGI. This is my favorite part of the report.
It's mind-blowing. So what happens when we stop grading countries just on wealth and health and we actually start charging them for their toll on the Earth?
You look at the planetary footprints.
Right. Picture two footprints. One is this massive, dark, heavily industrial gouge in the Earth. That's the global average. The world emits 4.536 tons of CO2 per capita. And the global material footprint is 12.7 tons.
That's the heavy tread of the developed world.
But the other footprint, it's tiny, it's green. Tajikistan's CO2 emissions are a mere 0.93 tons per capita.
Less than a single ton.
And their material footprint is just 3.6 tons against the world's 12.7.
So when the UN applies the planetary pressures adjustment,
The ultimate plot twist happens. The heavy polluting rich nations absolutely plummet in the rankings. But Tajikistan, their HDI value barely flinches. It only drops 2.6%, going from 0.691 to 0.673.
and because they hold their ground while everyone else falls, they leap upward by 21 places.
21 places. It's an incredible vindication of efficiency-first development. It proves that basic human development, living a long life, getting girls into secondary school, doesn't fundamentally require planetary destruction.
You don't need to burn the planet down to teach a kid to read.
Exactly. But, as with all data, there's a flashing warning light on the dashboard.
Yeah, the vulnerability risk.
If you look at the recent trend lines, their CO2 emissions have steadily risen. They went from 0.301 in 2011 to 0.93 today.
Crippling in just over a decade.
Right. And their material footprint peaked heavily around 2014 before dipping again.
And that's the danger. As industrialization advances, as they try to close that massive G&I gap and create jobs, there is a severe risk they will abandon this green advantage. Balancing that ecological red line with the need for economic growth is going to be their defining challenge.
It really is. So let's synthesize this whole deep dive. We're looking at a country with incredible, almost paradoxical assets. A highly educated adult population, profound resilience adding 16 years to life expectancy, surprising overall structural equality, and a remarkably low environmental cost.
But the pain points are equally undeniable. That extreme gender income divide and the worrying stagnation, that flat line in keeping the next generation in the school funnel.
So what's the prescription?
The data lays out a clear roadmap. Investments absolutely must pour into higher education and female workforce participation. But they have to do it while fiercely protecting their low-carbon advantage. They have to avoid the pollute first, clean up later trap that all the Western nations fell into.
And that actually leads me to a final provocative thought I want to leave you with today. We so often view a lack of rapid, heavy industrialization as a historical disadvantage. We call it underdeveloped.
Right.
But looking at Tajikistan's massive 21-place leap in the green rankings, you really have to wonder, could their delayed industrialization actually be their greatest secret weapon?
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
By not having this massive, deeply entrenched fossil fuel-reliant infrastructure that they now have to painfully tear down, are they uniquely positioned to leapfrog the rest of the world?
Straight into a green economy.
Exactly. Directly into a next-generation high-tech green economy. Think about that the next time you look at a country's GDP.